Hi everyone. I hope all of you are able to hear me and all of you are able to see my screen. Just checking if everything is in place before we get started with the session. Hi Kiran. Will be great to have some responses in the YouTube chat, so I can see Kiran has already written something. So hi Kiran, good evening. Hi Yash, good evening. Welcome to this session. So the format that we're going to have for this particular session is very simple. What I've done is I've collected a few questions from the students, and we are going to be discussing those questions. And while we are discussing them, if you have anything, you can always put it in the YouTube chat window as well. And I'll be taking questions that you have, right? So we're going to have a nice conversation around it over the next 1 hour or so. Okay. There's a question from Ryan whether CET will get postponed or not. We don't know that yet. So that is something that is a little unpredictable. Of course, there's no announcement from their side yet about it. They extended the deadlines, the registration deadlines quite a bit, but that may or may not have an impact on the final test date. So let's see. Okay. All right. So let's get started with the core agenda for this particular session. So what I've done is I've put 15 questions, first of all, which are like the most commonly asked questions related to CET. And I'll, of course, be taking any questions that you have, right? So you can just put it in the chat window and I'll make sure that I answer the question that you have asked. So now we have roughly about slightly less than a month, right? So before you actually face the CET. And there are a lot of questions that you must be having in your mind. So these are some of those questions. So the first question that I'm going to be talking about is how do you tackle long LR questions under time constraints, right? And in fact, on the Cracking CET blog also that we have, I recently received a question from a student that I know that I will be able to solve a particular LR set, but I know that it is going to be time consuming. So how do I decide whether should I stick around or should I move on to the next question or what should I do? So typically what you should, when you look at LR sets, right? If it is a 5 question LR set, which is generally how it will be, 7 to 8 minutes is the maximum. It's the upper limit that you can spend on it. Now, ideally, you should try and finish it prior to that. So somewhere around 4 to 5 minutes, that would be ideal. But just in case you take more time for, let's say it's a painful LR set, keep while you're solving your SimCETs, right? Your mock test at that time, and even while you're solving questions at home, try to keep a cap at 8 minutes, right? So 7 to 8 minutes, don't go beyond that because then you're spending too much time. So the time that you're spending and the return that you're getting on it, that is not making sense. At the same time, a lot of students get fixated on per question time or a question type. They will look at it and say, okay, I'm taking so much time on this particular thing. But what you also need to understand is you need to find a balance. So let's say you have 5 questions of LR and you have 5 questions of, let's say, grammar, right? So you have 10 questions. Now, for these 10 questions, you should be aiming to solve them within, say, 9 to 10 minutes, right? Or maybe even 8 minutes. So if you need, let's say, 6 minutes for LR or 7 minutes for LR, but in the next 2 or 3 minutes, you're able to answer all those questions of grammar, then the net effect is still what you wanted to achieve. So if you're able to find that balance, because there will always be question types that are more time consuming, where you will need more than a minute to solve that question. But there will be question types where you can answer it within 20 seconds or 15 seconds also. So if you find that balance, then it's fine. Every question, if you're taking more than a minute, that's a problem. But if you're finding a balance, nothing like it. Okay. So I would say 7 to 8 minutes, that's like the upper cap to keep for a difficult LR puzzle. Now, another commonly asked question is what's the expected difficulty level compared to SimCETs, right? So if I compare SimCETs with the actual CET, what's the equation like? So now what we have observed, right, is that SimCETs tend to be on the slightly tougher side, which means that a lot of students are not able to score beyond, say, 140 or 145 in most of the SimCETs that we have created. Now, that is by design, and I'll tell you the reason for it. So if a lot of you might not have heard of, let's say, CET 2019, 20, 21, and so on, and the years prior to it. At that point of time, CET used to be slightly difficult on the difficult side. Now, if you don't have a difficult test that you face in your practice SimCETs, when you go for the actual test and the paper comes out to be difficult, you don't know how to react to that situation. But if you're prepared for a paper like that in your SimCETs, then even if the paper on that day comes out to be difficult, you know how to solve. If it comes out to be easy, nothing like it, you'll be able to solve much more than what you have done. But if you continue to solve easy questions or easy SimCETs, and if we were to create easy SimCETs, first of all, we don't. But if we had done that, and then you go for the test comes out to be very difficult, then you don't know how to react to that situation. And that is the reason why we keep SimCETs on the slightly difficult side. So it's okay even if you're not able to score at a very high level, right? So you might be thinking, oh, for JBMS, I need to have, say, a 145, a 150, or a 160. Right now, let's say you're at 120 or 125, 130, 135. There is chance to get into JBMS. So you should be pushing yourself as much as possible. Even somebody who might be, let's say, at 120 or in a mock, let's say you, for some reason, you bombed it, you got 110, right? That does not mean that you will not be able to get into a good college or you will not be able to score at a higher level. You will have to push in the remaining days, for sure. That everybody will have to do. Even somebody who is at 140 will try and push their score up, right? What you will have to think of is, whatever my score is, let me try and push as much as possible, right, in the remaining days that you have. So don't think too much into what is the level of SimCETs versus level of the actual test. On average, you will find SimCETs to be tougher than the actual test. Okay. Last year, if you look at, for example, last year's paper, which was CET 23, so most of the papers, right, across the slots, if you look at them, they were slightly on the easier side, which means that a lot of people were able to go beyond a 160, 170, 180 genuine attempts. See, typically a topper, right, is also somebody who has about 80-85% accuracy. So when somebody is scoring, let's say solving 180 or 190 questions, their score would be in the range of 150-ish. Right? When you look at people who in easy papers, right, and we have been there where we have solved or been able to see all 200 questions, wherever CET had announced the score. So let's say when I was a student at that point of time, they used to give the final results. I had a score of 163 on 200 at that point of time, right? But last year when I look at it and they didn't release marks, I was able to go through pretty much all 200 questions. My hunch is I would have scored somewhere in the range of 170, right? So it was possible to go beyond a 155, 160 for a prepared candidate last year, right? If you had managed your time well and everything, and you were like a JBIMS hopeful. So last year it wasn't very, very difficult. But if you look at 2017, 18, 19, the papers were difficult. And in fact, there were papers wherein the topper was around 140, right? So when the topper is around 140, you know that the paper has turned out to be difficult. So if the topper goes beyond 160, 165, then you know that it is slightly on the easier side. So CET is never easy, by the way. So don't think that CET is going to be easy to crack. It's not. But then just slightly on the easier side where a topper would go beyond 160. What's a moderate paper is where the topper is around 150. What's a difficult paper is when the topper is around 140. Right? So those would be the way I look at things. Now let's move on to the next question, how to manage time during the test. So when you're taking your SimCETs, right, how do you manage your time? So firstly, time management won't naturally come to you unless you practice it a lot. So even when you're doing any question at home, right, you're just sitting and solving questions, I would say take a bunch of questions and time yourself. So what you can do is, let's say you're sitting with your class exercise or practice exercise. It has 30 questions, right? Whatever it is, just time yourself. So you can say, okay, maybe let me time myself for 45 minutes or let me time myself for 30 minutes and then see how many questions am I able to solve. So that is an exercise or activity which will really help you to get a sense of how much time you're spending per question, right? So once you get that sense, then it's a little easier for you to even replicate that in the test condition. So when you're taking your SimCETs, right, the full length papers that you have, just have a look at, and you don't look at the timer again and again, right? Broadly, you should be looking at the timer after around 25-30 questions. So once you've solved 25-30 questions, look at the timer. Once you've solved another 25-30 questions, look at the timer. Roughly, that would be around 20-25-30 minutes, depending on how fast you are, right? So make it a point to have a look at the timer to see whether you're going on track or you're behind schedule. Now, if you're behind schedule, you might have to increase your speed by doing easy questions. So there is a compensatory exercise that you're doing, right? That I'm lagging behind a little bit. Let me increase my pace up a little bit by solving easier questions so that I cover some ground. And then, of course, I'll have the liberty of time post that, correct? So, for example, last year again, right? It was a paper wherein the moment you see a difficult question, you just move on because there are so many easy questions to spot that you should not be spending any time on the difficult ones. So the moment you realize, oh, this looks something which is going to be time consuming, just move on to the next thing. And that will lead to a situation where you've covered significant ground in the first 1 hour. So typically, I recommend students to keep a target of reaching somewhere around 70 to 80 attempts in the first 1 hour if possible, right? Which is basically covering as many easy questions as you can, right? So I see a question, easy, do it. Verbal, something that you can just quickly read, finish it off, right? So that is a methodology that you can try out. So try it in your SimCETs, wherein you try to look at the timer every 25, 30 minutes or so, or after you've solved around 25, 30 questions to see if things are working on track. First hour, try to get to an attempt of at least a 60, right? If not 80 or more, at least a 60 should be your aim in the first 1 hour, right? So that builds up your confidence as well. Then, which specific topics should candidates prioritize? Now, of course, you have somewhere close to 30 odd days, right? You don't even have exact 30 days. I would suggest that anything that gives you quick returns, you have to do it. Okay. So basically, for example, quick return topics are calculation based topics, right? Wherein you just do some calculations and you're done. You try to improve your speed on that front. What is, or even in verbal, there are so many question types within verbal wherein you don't need so much time to solve because you're just looking at the question and answering it. Right? So if at all you have, let's say, 50 questions of VRC, you should not be taking more than 30 minutes for it. So mentally, you should be thinking that, okay, for these 50 questions, my cutoff is going to be 30, 35 minutes, not more than that. Okay. And that will save about 15 minutes, which you can use elsewhere. Okay. I'll talk about time distribution a little later as we go along. Now, again, regarding topics, so if I can add a little bit on that front. So what I will do is within logic, right? I will not spend too much time on questions such as series or random logical puzzles, but I'll solve a lot of LR sets, which are based on matrix arrangements, blood relations, and so on. And then the standalone question types that you have, blood relation, coding, decoding, because that is generally straightforward. I will also be looking at any other question type that I can see that I am good at. See, because not everybody will be good at everything. So in abstract reasoning, for example, a lot of people find it easy to solve analogy questions. But there will be people who will say, no, for me, analogy questions are difficult. Okay, so basis your own assessment that these are the topics where I'm generally good. You focus on those more so that you try and get higher accuracy on that front. See, something where you're so far, let's say you're not done extremely well, I will try and make it a little better, but I'll not say that, okay, let me make it 100 on 100 because that may not happen in the remaining time. So I also have to be realistic. And I keep saying this in all my sessions that when I was a student, I realized that assumption, inference, conclusion, these are the three areas that no matter what I do, I don't get an accuracy which is more than 60%. Now, what do? I have a choice. I can keep on solving more questions of that still does not guarantee a very high accuracy. Or let me improve my other areas so well that I get 100 on 100 there. So that there is a balance, 60%, 100%, the average comes out to be 80%, right? So that is something that can be looked at. That let me look at what I am good at, focus on that, make it 100 on 100 kind of a thing. Whatever it is, which is less than 60 on 100, which are like your low accuracy areas, try and solve more questions. I'm not saying don't do it, but then that is not going to be my focus for the next 1 month. Then how to improve accuracy in the individual sections. Now, firstly, what I look at is whenever I'm solving, right? Why am I not getting a particular question correct? And every SimCET that you take, if you're not sitting with it and analyzing it thoroughly, it's not going to be a useful exercise. So again, going back to those days when I was a student like you guys, right? I used to take a mock. On the same day, I would ensure that I do all those questions, right? Not solving all the questions again, but anything that I've missed, anything that I've got wrong, I have to look at the solution, right, on the same day. And the next day's task is very simple, that you try and solve more questions of the areas that you didn't get right in that particular mock. So if today I have made 2 mistakes in time, speed, distance, tomorrow let me go back and solve those 2 question types. Then again, you take a mock, right? And you just keep on doing this exercise. I also covered this methodology in my how to crack CET video that we had put on YouTube a few days back, that alternate day mock is the best thing to do. One day you take a mock, analyze it on the same day, solve all the missed and the wrong questions. Next day, solve more questions of those types that you're not getting correct. And that's the methodology that you follow. That's the only way in which you can improve your accuracy, right? There's no magic formula that suddenly your accuracy will go up. And then finding that balance, because ultimately it's that, right? I will not have 80% accuracy in every single question. In some, I'll have 60, in some, I'll have 100. And that's how I'm looking at that 80% accuracy. Okay. Now let's move on to the next set of questions. So what's the recommended time allocation per section, right? Now, this is a question that is often asked, and there are multiple possibilities as to how the final CET may be. The first possibility is that it's a completely jumbled paper with 200 questions, wherein first question could be abstract, then there are 3-4 questions of abstract. Suddenly there is a passage, then you finish that passage, suddenly there is a quant question. It's a completely jumbled paper. That is possibility 1. Possibility 2 is that the questions of one area appear one after the other, which means all first 25-30 questions are abstract reasoning. Then you have, let's say, 60-70 questions of LR. Then you have 45-50 questions of verbal, wherein the number of questions from a particular area may not be the same, which means that slot 1 may have 50 questions of VRC, but slot 2 had suddenly 55 questions, right? That is also possible. The third thing that can happen is that there is a nice sectional split that is given, so that at the top you can see abstract reasoning, you click on it, there are 25 questions. Then you have VRC, you can see nice 50 questions in that. That is the ideal kind of a situation. So if it is a jumbled thing, the strategy should be to solve as many questions as possible as you're progressing. You see a difficult question, you stay away from it, move forward, just keep moving forward, right? And that is how you complete the first round of doing all the easy questions from the entire paper. If it is something which is like the second possibility that I spoke about, which happened last year, that questions from an area will appear together. So the first 20-25 questions, let's say, are abstract reasoning. In that case, or if it is a sectional paper, then the time allocation that I would recommend is this. For abstract reasoning, somewhere around 20-25 minutes, because there are 25 questions. For logical reasoning, not more than 60 minutes. 65 would be still an upper stretch, but 65, maybe that is where you can cap it. When it comes to the quantitative and data interpretation section, I would cap it at about 45 to 50 minutes. And for VARC, I would say around 35 to 40 minutes, right? That would be the ideal time distribution, okay? So if you are able to do that, again, depending on your strength and weaknesses, you can adjust a little bit. Somebody can say, oh, my quant is very strong. I'm able to do 50 questions in 40 minutes, but my VRC is a problem. I will not be able to do it in 35. I'll need a 40-45, right? So that adjustment of plus or minus 5 is what you will have to do. But otherwise, you should be looking at the distribution that I mentioned. Then again, that brings us to the next question, how to approach a completely jumbled test, right? Wherein there is no sectional breakup, no particular order in which questions appear, right? In that case, the simplest thing to do is to start and go like a raging bull, where you see easy question, you do it. You see something difficult, stay away from it, right? So in the first round, I'll just do easy and maybe moderate questions. I'll not touch a single difficult thing. And that is something that I used to do whenever we had jumbled test as well, right? That you see something very difficult, skip, you can always come back to it later. But while you're doing it in the first round, it is not worth your time, okay? Because if you mess it up, let's say you spend 5-7 minutes, but there's no luck, that hits you a lot, right? In terms of, so you'll have to catch up. And playing that catch-up game sometimes stresses out people. So that is why you should try in SimCs as well, right? wherein if at all something bad happens, how do you recover from that situation? Because if you know it, you can do it on the final day as well. Then how can candidates effectively cover the entire CET syllabus in a month, right? So what I would do, right, is let me take 1 or 2 mocks first, if I have not done it already. If I've done those mocks, I know now that, okay, these are the topics where I have some understanding, right? Maybe I am a 6 on 10 or a 7 on 10 kind of a thing. There are some topics where I have no clue, right? And there are some topics where I'm okay, right? So good topics, average topics, bad topics, right? What I will ensure is that I have covered the first two, the ones where I'm good at, the ones where I'm moderate, the ones where I have absolutely no clue, right? I will do these only once I've finished the first and the second bracket. Okay. Now, when you look at covering the entire syllabus, firstly, know that you don't have to cover the entire syllabus. There will be some areas that you can stay away from. It will still not hurt you. Okay. And I'm saying this only because we have less than 30 days. If at all, again, I'm giving that disclaimer that if at all CET gets postponed, then all of you should try and do all the topics. But if CET happens on 9/10, which is effectively giving us less than a month, I'm going to focus on the strength and the moderate areas that I have, rather than the areas where I'm not very, very good. Okay? Don't completely ignore it, especially if it is, say, quant. So don't say I'll not do entire quant. That's generally a bad strategy. Even in quant, you will have some topics where you can just do 10 to 15 formulae and you will be able to solve majority of the questions. Think of percentages, profit loss, SICI, time and work. So these are the areas that I will not completely leave. But maybe I can say, for example, somebody will say, I am not very, very good at permutation combination. I've tried a lot. I'm not able to remember all those things that are out there. What are those conditions, at least, at most, and so on. Let me stay away from it. And even on a good day, you are not going to have, or a bad day, however you want to put it, more than 5 or 10 questions from that area, right? But if you leave, let's say, arithmetic, which will generally be 15 to 20 questions, then that becomes a problem. So I can leave something only if I have a lot of areas where I'm good or moderate. So again, at my time, assumption, inference, conclusion was a bad area for me. And that's accepting your reality. That I'm not good at it. But that doesn't mean that you don't solve those questions at all. You just do a few questions, at least so that you're able to mark something when it is thrown at you. But you don't rely on it. Okay, so it's not something that you can rely on. So I will say, look at the topics that you categorize them in 3 brackets. First of all, focus on the first and the second bracket where you are already good. Make sure that it is a 100 on 100 thing. Once you have finished those things, move to the moderate one. And then from there, if you have time, go to the ones that you have so far not touched in any way. Then is it advisable to take mock test daily? I generally don't recommend it unless you absolutely need it. I will say that nobody needs it. Because see, a lot of times we have this false sense of achievement because we are doing something, and that's a wrong thing. If I do a mock test every day, it sounds good, right? I can tell my parents or my friends that I'm taking a mock every day. If I'm doing it with a rational thought as to why I'm doing it, it's still fine. But if I'm doing it just to sound good to others, please don't do it. A good frequency is one every alternate day. For example, right now also, if you start one every alternate day, you should be able to complete, because we have 20 SimCETs that we offer, right? You should be able to complete all 20, right? With some days wherein you do one every day. But that will not leave you exhausted. If you do one every day, it might lead to exhaustion. If you think you can manage it, you are somebody who's just preparing for CET, fair enough, right? Even then, I would say take at least one day of the week a break wherein you don't take a mock, because it's just unnecessary, right? People who run every single day may or may not have a fantastic result in terms of how they perform on the actual marathon day. And there is a study also on that, wherein they basically had 2 groups. They looked at people who ran every single day, how did it impact their time on the actual marathon, and they had another group where they were running but taking rest as well. And what was the impact? And they found that people who are taking regular rest, because they have also recovery and everything going on, they were able to reduce the time that they take, right, to complete the marathon. So that is why take some rest in between. It will always be helpful. Moving to the last question from this, which is how to crack the test without having a strong command over quant section. Now, within quant, don't leave data interpretation completely, because it is just percentages and ratios. So I will say that you do percentages, you do ratios really well. These two areas, if you are able to master these two, any DI set can be solved easily. But if you don't have percentages and ratios as mastery, then DI becomes a little shaky. If you have 4 sets on that final day, generally 2 to 3 will be easily doable. Maybe there could be one which is slightly painful. If you identify that, stay away from it. If you have more time at the end, come back to it, right? But percentages and ratios, you have to be very, very good at it. So you should not, even without blinking an eye, you should just say 3 upon 8 is 37.5%, right? Or whatever it is. So you should be able to convert from fraction to percentages and reverse. Then ratios, if you're given ratios, then how do you handle that? So percentages, ratios, absolutely important for DA. So do these two, because there are, again, standalone questions also in these two topics, and it has applications in data interpretation. Then another very, very important thing is going to be set theory, because you generally have these Venn diagram based questions wherein there will be some application of set theory. So that is also something I will definitely do, because typically those are quick returns. You get 5 marks in maybe 3 to 4 minutes, correct? So that is what I'll focus on within quant area. I will definitely look at arithmetic. So things like ratio, percentage ratios I've already mentioned, but then profit loss discount, which is application of percentages, time and work, which is also application of percentages and ratios. Time and work, if you like it, do it. If you don't like it, you can at least do the basic and stay away from the difficult areas. Definitely do linear equations, quadratic equations. Those would be two easy to handle topics. Then at least the basics of AP-GP. AP-GP basics, if you're able to handle, great. Then within geometry, 2D geometry is what I'll focus on, and mensuration. Within 2D geometry also, don't go to an extent where you do a lot of difficult questions, but you should know all the basic principles, right? So for example, if you drop a perpendicular from the center, it is going to bisect a chord. Then Pythagorean triplets, all those things. So 2D geometry, within 3D geometry, mensuration, you have to know all the formulae. Anything that is formula dependent, I should know it. Okay, so that is how I'm going to look at it. At least these areas, if you do, and of course, one very important thing that I missed out was indices. Okay, because again, it has a lot of application. When I say indices, it won't hurt you to do the very few laws of logarithms that are there, because I've seen people staying away from that topic, but it's just an extension of indices. If you understand indices, you can understand logarithms. So don't waste time doing something which is completely random. For example, somebody doing equation of a line, equation of a circle for CET, not going to be very, very useful. Okay. That brings us to the last 5 questions, and then I'll be taking questions from the audience. Okay. What's the optimal schedule in terms of study hours and SimCETs? Okay. Again, alternate day schedule, follow that. So one day you take a SimCET, which is 2.5 hours of question solving. Then on the same day, you solve all the missed questions and all the wrong questions. Okay. That day, you would have done nice 200 questions, right? And you would have spent somewhere around 4.5 hours, right? The next day, I will do questions from the areas that I'm getting wrong. And that could be anything depending on how much time you get. 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, whatever it is, right? So whatever you need, you'll have to do that much. Then what to do if SimCET scores are consistently lower than expected? And this happens to a lot of people. See, a lot of times what I've observed is students don't realize that it's a speed test also, right? It's not a test of content only. It's a test of speed. And that also means that it is a test of how quickly you can read things, you can comprehend things, you can assimilate that information, and then come up with the solution. So you will have to think, where is the issue, right? Where exactly is the issue? Is the issue that I don't know the topic? If you don't know the topic, you'll not be able to solve the question. Or I know the topic, but this particular question, right? I am unable to figure out what is like the starting point of it, right? Or in this particular question, I know the topic, I was able to start somewhere, I got stuck in between. Something else can also happen, wherein you make a silly mistake, calculation error, for example. So I will have to keep thinking that while I'm getting this particular score, what mistakes am I making on the way? So I got a message again from somebody, I think it was a comment on one of the videos, right? So attempts around 90, score around 60 something. Now, when you have attempts 90, clearly there is a content gap. Okay. There is also a speed gap because you're not able to reach beyond 90 attempts. So your per question time is too much at this point of time. So I'll have to see, am I making the right choices? Is my content enough to move to say 90 to some other attempt, right? Now, what I'll do is, once I have this thing that I've attempted 90, I've got 60 correct. First thing I'll do after the mock is sit and figure out that what are these 110 questions that I didn't see during the test, or I saw but I didn't attempt. Let me solve those questions and try and figure out of these, how many do I know how to solve? So let's say out of 110, maybe you know 20 questions, right? What are the remaining 90? So which means there's a clear gap in the content. So now I'll have to spend a lot of time so that I cover more ground, which will reduce the questions that I don't know. Okay. So these 20 add to your score. So you got 60 out of 90 initially, right? And out of the remaining 110, you observed that, oh, these 20 questions I should have got. So now 60 plus 20. Potential score is 80. It's not 60, it's 80. So you underperformed, correct? And once I've identified, okay, these are the areas where content is the issue. These are the areas where speed is the issue. These are the areas where I'm making some silly errors. These are the areas that I should not have touched during the test, but I'm solving them. All of these mistakes that you're making, the awareness of this will ensure that your score will start improving. How much time it will take, we don't know. And nobody knows that beforehand, right? So for example, you can go from say a 60 to 80 just by finding your mistakes fairly comfortably. But then moving from 80 to 90 might be a bit of a stretch, right? Or moving from say 80 to 110. So I will not keep very big targets in terms of mock to mock. So I'll not say today I've got a 60, let me target 100 in the next mock. Not going to happen. You will meet with a disappointment. So that is why don't keep very big targets. Keep incremental targets. That today if I got a 60 and I've attempted 90 questions, tomorrow let me attempt 100 questions and try and get a say a 65 or a 66. Right? So every mock, if you can increase your target of solving the number of questions by say 5 to 10 and getting marks, extra marks about 5, that's a good way to approach. But otherwise, I'll not keep very high targets for myself. And it doesn't truly matter how much you are getting right now. Because after a few days, within 2 to 3 weeks, you'll start realizing the kind of mistakes that you're making. See, all of us, when we are taking the initial SimCETs, we bring some knowledge to the table. It could be because I prepared for the CAT, so I have that content. And now I'm moving from that to a CET format, right? Or somebody might say, I've always prepared for CET and MAT Snap, so that's the knowledge that I bring, correct? You also are, or maybe used to some sort of a thing, right? So you may be good at content-based exams, or you might be somebody who is good at speed-based exams. You have to figure out, considering all of these things, what is my potential score at this point of time? And whatever you can push, right, in the next days. Because there will, of course, be a limit to how much you can push. But then let me try and reach that limit. Okay? Just to, again, take you back to my prep days, my first attempt in my mocks, I used to get around a 130. So I started with like a 130 score. In some mocks, I used to get on the lower side also, like 110, 115, 120. The average was somewhere in the range of 120, 125 that time. In the actual test, I was able to go beyond 135. So push will happen. Right? Typically, from your best SimCET performance, you can expect to go beyond, say, 15, 20, even more than that. That is possible because depending on how the paper comes out, things might work in your favor on that particular day. There will be some element of luck also, right? Let's say there are 20 remaining questions. You mark everything C. Suddenly, 8 questions come out to be correct, right? Your score has gone up by 8. There'll be some elements like that, of course, which you can't rely on. But I'll not be too harsh on myself and keep thinking negatively about it, that I'm not getting a good enough score. I'm not getting a good enough score. See, if you don't work on it, anyway, nothing is going to happen. I said, you might as well give your best in the remaining 1 month and then see whatever happens, right? Even if you don't get a good score, at least you tried, at least you gave your best. And I honestly think that is what should matter, right? How to maintain a positive mindset, especially with low SimCET scores. So, firstly, I will think about what is it that I want to do in life, and what are the reasons as to why I started this thing in the first place. See, there will be a lot of people who will keep talking negative things about anything. CET, for example. So they'll say government is not conducting it properly, this, that, you can't rely on CET and all of that. But then you decided this for yourself, right? That I'm going to try for CET. Now, within that frame, that, okay, there are things that are beyond your control. Within that frame, what is the best that I can do? Correct. So you may or may not like the admission process, but what is the best that I can do with the things that have been given to me? I'll focus on that. I will think about what is the reason as to why I am doing this, why I am thinking of doing an MBA, and that should drive you forward. So any external motivation will not help you. Motivation is always going to be internal. So you have to ask yourself, why am I doing this? So if today I'm taking a SimCET, why am I taking a SimCET? What's the objective? Is it to check whether I'm fast? Is it to check my content? What is it, right? So every day you follow the process. You just think, keep that big goal that you have in your mind, that I have to get a good score. And whatever I can do in the remaining days is going to be for that thing. Right? So if you're, let's say, watching 3 hours of YouTube today, right? You know that you're not going in the right direction. So you'll have to cut down on the things that are not positive. Social media, for example, you may have to cut down significantly. YouTube, you'll have to cut down significantly. So, and decide between what is informational content and what is nonsense. And consume informational content. Don't consume nonsensical content. What are some tips for solving DI quickly? What's the ideal time per set? Again, for DI, keep it similar to what I mentioned for LR in the beginning, which is going to be about 7 to 8 minutes maximum for a 5-question set. Okay. Why I do that is because typically DI would have a very high accuracy, and you can always compensate for that extra time by solving other easier questions such as abstract reasoning or VRC and so on. Right? And the last question before I jump to the questions that all of you have asked in the chat window, what are the best strategies to prepare oneself mentally and physically? Okay, so there's a lot of research and a lot of work that people have done in this particular thing about mentally keeping yourself at your best and physically keeping yourself at your best, right? Couple of things. One is sleep as much as possible. 7 to 8 hours is generally good enough for most of the people. Have that, that will really help, because when you're solving a lot of questions, you are tiring your brain out. One very important tool to recover is sleep. So 7 to 8 hours of sleep, I will definitely do that. Another thing is going to be eating healthy stuff as much as possible. The more junk you eat, it also reflects and affects your performance in aptitude test, right? So I will suggest you try and stick to homemade food as much as possible. Just taking care of your health, right? Getting a little bit of exercise. You may not be liking it, but I'll still do maybe 15, 20 minutes of, let's say, just a walk, or maybe 30 minutes of some activity. So 30 minutes of exercise, eating the right stuff. That ensures that your brain is getting enough food and everything, and rest and everything that is required to perform well in an aptitude test. Because on that day, you don't have to be a burnt out person. A person who has done so much in these last few days, that you're tired at the end of it. So you'll have to conserve your energy also as much as possible. So that is about the physical part of it. Mental part, as I said, stay away from negative people, negative content. Don't indulge into some unnecessary speculations and stupid discussions. I mean, people keep making videos on YouTube about how last year slot one was difficult, so this year also slot one will be difficult. That's absolute nonsense, right? Nothing like that happens. So don't get into these things. It's like predicting where the market is going to go. Nobody knows, right? So there's no point spending time on it. Some random strategies are not going to work, right? What you put in terms of effort, that will translate into a good result. So focus on that. I hope that will be helpful. Okay. So let's do one thing now. I've exhausted the questions that I had initially put down. Let me take questions from the audience now, right? So I'm going to look at the YouTube chat. Let me start with how to score in QA. So Sri Lakshmi, as I mentioned, right, I'll focus on the areas that have the maximum number of questions, which is going to be percentages ratios for sure, because it also has applications in DI. Then I will look at arithmetic, profit loss discount, SICI, time and work. A lot of questions appear from this area. Then calculation based questions, indices, also linked to logarithms. Then linear and quadratic equations for sure. And then I'll do 2D geometry, 3D geometry, mensuration, that is. That covers like the core that is required. If you have more time, you can always look at P&C probability as an additional thing. But I'll not do anything which is too ultra difficult for CET. Kiran, my scores are stuck between 100, 110, even after analyzing, working on that gap of 90 marks, practicing questions. Score is still not improving. What do I do in the remaining 25 days? So firstly, content, right? You will have to figure what kind of content it is that you're not able to do at this point of time. So let me work on it. The other thing is I will critically look at my rough sheets. Your rough sheets tell you a lot, by the way. And I didn't speak about rough sheets in my entire discussion so far. Once you take a mock at home, and while you're analyzing your paper, right, also look at the amount of rough work that you have done. So there will be some questions wherein so much rough work was not even required. Maybe you could have used options to eliminate. Maybe you could have just looked at the screen a little more with more focus, and you would have got the answer. Right? So there's no need to translate everything on paper that you see on screen. That leads to wastage of time. So anything that I could have solved mentally, why am I writing it on paper? Right? So if a question comes which is to find, let's say, square of something plus square of something, at least I can make an attempt to do it in my head. Right? If not possible, do it on paper. Even there, I'll try and figure out, was this the most optimal way to solve it? Correct. So do your rough sheet analysis, Kiran. I think you should be able to pick at least a few areas there where maybe you should not have written something. And your content, because 90 questions is a huge gap, right? 90 questions will at least include maybe 15 to 20 odd areas that are there, correct? So in these areas, if I'm able to increase my content a little bit, and while solving, if I'm able to go faster, then this is like a combination of all these things which will lead to a higher score. But again, see, the improvement is not going to be immediate. So just because you did it today does not mean that your score will jump tomorrow. I'm scoring 90 to 100. Will I be able to score 140, 150 in next 25 days? Brian, nobody can answer that question for you, right? Because see, there are a lot of factors at play. It's not so simple because there will be a lot of people in the 90 to 100 range at this point of time. Whether all of them will be able to go to 140, 150, cannot say. And ultimately, the performance, the success in this test is going to be relative. If the paper comes out to be difficult, everybody's score will drop. But even within that, if you're in the top 1%, you get a 99%. If the paper comes out to be easy, everybody's score will go up, let's say by 20 marks. Right? But within that, if you're able to manage to stay in the top, then you will get a higher score. Correct. I will say don't keep thinking of 140, 150. From 90 to 100, the next target is going to be 100 to 110. Once you hit that, then you target 110 to 120. Because a lot of times, if you think that the target is too big to achieve, right, people stop putting in the effort that is required because they have made up their mind that it is not possible to achieve. A lot of times, this is something that you will also study when you go to your MBA and then you start working. When people get exceptionally high targets, you will see that their motivation to work towards those targets takes a hit because they have made up their mind that the target will not be met. So that is why the target should be incremental within range that if they push, they can achieve. Okay. JBMS will accept CMAT also. Ankit, most likely yes. I mean, they did it last year, so but again, there's no news about CMAT as of now. Question from Krishna. Are IMS modules enough for practice? Absolutely. Plus all the SimCETs. So that's 20 SimCETs, which is 4,000 questions. Not able to score even 100 in SimCETs, max 95. It's okay. See, again, content, speed, accuracy. There are three parts to it. Figure out where the gaps are, what are these topics, why you're not able to solve, and you will find an answer to it. See, if we sit with a problem for a long period of time, we will find the answer. Unmesh, how to study or revise the portion on the day before or on the day of the exam, or what to do during these days? So when I was a student, my pre-test day routine was very simple. Just go through all the formulae once or twice. Okay, so all quant formulae, once or twice you do on the day prior to CET, and you don't take a mock on that day. So if your test is on, let's say, Sunday, Saturday, you don't take a mock. The max that you can go till is Friday. So take the mock on Friday. That will be the last mock that you take. Analyze it on the same day. Saturday, relax. Go through your formula book, some light concepts. If you want, maybe you can solve a few questions without timing yourself. But that may not be required. See, if you do 10 mocks, minimum 10, you know now how the CET works, right? You know that's a 200 question paper, you have 150 minutes, you know how to handle yourself, right? But now you'll have to, so there is nothing much to do on the last few days. So the last 1 or 2 days, what's there to do? So the revision should happen parallelly while you're taking your SimCETs, analyzing, solving questions. Now is the time to revise. You cannot wait till the last day to do your revision. Question from Simmer. Even I'm scoring around 90 to 100 without flukes. I'm weak in QA, reasonably good in LR verbal. But as the paper is jumbled, I'm unable to decide in what order should I solve. Okay. So Simmer, we have given two kinds of test this time to our students. One where it is completely jumbled and one where the questions of an area appear one after the other. The reason why we have done it is because these are the two formats that they have given in the last 2 years. So just to ensure that people get practice of both formats, we have done that. Okay. So I would suggest that you take mocks of both types so that you are able to figure out how to handle this situation. Since last 3-4 papers, I'm not able to improve my score. What should I do? I'm going to ask you, Sakshi, what you have done in the last few days, right? It's not only about test. What do you do apart from taking the test? Do you solve, say, 20, 30 questions of the individual types? So if today I didn't get a time and work question correct, what do I do tomorrow? I go back to my book. I spend 10, 15 minutes on going through theory once again. I solve 10, 15 questions of time and work, right? That's the thing that everybody will have to do to get better. How to tackle mixed CETs, getting very low in non-sectional mocks. As I said, go as fast as possible. 30, 40 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 question is generally the recommendation. So 30, 40 strategy. But I'll say a 60, 80 is what you're looking at. Because after first hour, if you're able to go beyond 60 attempts, then you've covered a significant ground. So that will be the focus, that those will be the easy ones. So I'll start from question 1. See it, decide whether you want to do it or not. If you're doing it, do it fast, move forward. If you're not doing it, move to the next question. So that is something that you'll have to do in jumbled, because jumbled paper will mean that you have to take a second or a third round. You will not be able to do everything in the first round. What should be the strategy to approach the whole paper? I've already discussed it, so I don't know if there's anything left to cover. Does anyone know how many students are going to appear this year? Manas, again, don't care about these things, right? Because all these discussions generally tend to unnecessarily scare people. Doesn't matter. Last few years, it has been about a lakh plus. But if you actually look at the number of seats that are available in the Maharashtra colleges, right? That number, I think, was somewhere around 35,000, if I'm not wrong, which means that there are going to be a lot of people who are not serious about the test, right? Because in fact, a lot of these colleges who are at the very bottom, they're not able to fill the entire seats that they have, right? Because people get admits, they don't join these colleges. So that is why a lot of people who are taking the CETs is a weight which is not uh, doing anything to you. It's just pushing your percentile up, right? So that's a good thing in a way. So don't worry. Doesn't really matter how many people take it. You just have to give your best, be in the top, whatever percent that you are thinking. And again, when people ask, there are very few seats, right? The simple question is, how many seats do you need? So if JB has, let's say, whatever, 38, 40, 50, 52, 53 seats now. When I was a student, we had 38 Mumbai University seats. The question is, how many seats do you need? You need one for yourself, right? So how does it matter if there are 38 or 100? It should not make a difference to you. Yash has asked, good score in IMS mocks. If you're targeting GBMS, you should be aiming at something around a 125 plus in SimCs. Okay? How to improve efficiency while giving for jumbled paper? I've spoken about it. I'm trying this strategy where I solve 40 questions in 30 minutes, which would include flukes as well. Is this a good strategy? Uh, if the number of flukes that you make are very, very minimal, I would say maybe 5 flukes every block of 40 questions, then it's fine. I will do that. But if it is a lot of flukes, that in 30 minutes you're doing 40 questions, but let's say 15 are flukes, then I will not do that strategy. I'm getting around 130, 120s. What should be my next target score and schedule? I think 120, 130 is a fair place to be in. Target wise, obviously 140 becomes the next target, right? And then you should try and do that within the next 10 days or so. So you'll have to push a little bit. But even if it does not happen, I think 130 is a fair score to hit. How to score in vocab? What are the sources? Last 1 month, I'll not spend too much time on vocab. That's my simplest answer. Whatever vocab you can improve through organic reading. So reading for 30 minutes a day, for example, if you read an article, next to you, keep a rough sheet wherein you just write the words that you're not able to understand. Google meanings of those words. So 30, 40 minutes of reading per day. Through this, you can learn new words. The second thing is when you're solving RCs at home, there also, whatever new you encounter, Google those words. That way, improve your vocabulary. But if you sit with a book and you just try to mug words, in the last 1 month, that is generally not a good idea. Okay, because the return will not be commensurate. So you'll not get fantastic return out of it. Will the questions be jumbled or section-wise? Ankush, nobody knows that. Aditya, after first hour of attempting all easy questions, how to manage and optimize one score? Then again, you do a second round, right? So let's say, for example, in the first 60 minutes, you've reached about 110 questions. You've skipped 30 questions in the process. So you've solved 80 questions, but the question number that you've reached is 110. You still have 90 questions to go. So you will continue to do that, which is just doing all the easy ones. Let's say by the time you reach 200, let's say you have solved some 130 questions genuinely, right? Now your second round begins. So whatever you had skipped, the 70 difficult questions that you had skipped, that is your second round. So you again do that loop. You click on that question that you didn't attempt, see if you can do it. Otherwise, move to the next one. Right? Of course, that leads to a wastage of time, but then that's the only way to solve it because now you have exhausted all the easy questions. Is there any chance to get exam postponed? We don't know. All India candidate rank 2 in slot 3 not got JBMS last year. How to be top scorer AIR 1? Firstly, you don't control how others would perform, right? You just control what you do. So push as much as possible, right? And then I will definitely say, look at taking MAT, ATMA, CMAT. So CET, can't be the only test that you take if you're thinking of JBIMS. So you should be looking at CMAT as well, MAT as well, and ATMA. Because firstly, now we don't know whether they will accept MAT ATMA or not. That they will announce after the cap round announcement happens, which is after CET. So if you don't take CMAT, MAT, ATMA, you may not have that chance later. So that is why, especially MAT, ATMA, CMAT anyway, if it happens, it will happen only once. But especially MAT, ATMA. So people who are thinking of JBMS seriously, simplest advice, don't only depend on CET. At ATMA. Vocab is weak, hardly get 2 on 10. How to improve? Will word power made easy help? Is it worth investing time? As I said, right now, not really. So I'll do organic reading, 30 minutes, 40 minutes a day, read articles. From there, whatever new words you learn, you can note them down. And then when you solve RCs, when you take your SimCETs, whatever new words you come across, you do only those. Will it be advisable to learn something new this month, or will it be better to go with mocks, analysis, and time building? Yeah, absolutely. So, Ketki, I will not try and learn something which is too difficult. See, let's say I've not done logarithm so far at all. But logarithm learning will not take more than 3 to 4 hours because there are very limited laws that govern logarithms. So can I learn those laws and do say 15-20 questions in the next 3-4 hours? Yes. So I'll do it. But some area which is too vast and too difficult, for example, of functions and graphs, it's not asked on the CET. Even if they ask a function question, maybe there will be one question. So why do it? Right? Unless they do a stupidity that they had done, I think in the CET 21, if I'm not wrong, wherein they asked suddenly, I think there were questions on higher mathematics, but that is unlikely. We hope that it will not happen. Will this CET be difficult? Like other exams like CAT-ZAT, they'll release a response sheet, any change expected. Firstly, they don't release response sheets and everything. I mean, I think you're expecting too much from the CET. CET doesn't believe in all these things. So maybe you're someone who has not followed the CET scene of the last few years, and you're thinking very positively about it. So they don't release response sheets. They'll not release the final scores that you get. They'll just release percentiles, and there's nothing that can be done post that. Okay. So regarding difficulty, again, unpredictable, completely unpredictable. Okay. Let's take a few recent ones. Any tips to solve abstract reasoning questions? I'm really poor at that. I would say 25 to 30 questions per day. If you can do even that much, over a period of time, it will build exposure. So 30 questions a day, next 20 days, 600 questions. Right? That's significant exposure. So now you'll realize that, okay, what are the typical patterns like? So what is a position replacement? Right? What is, say, mirror image, water image, replacement if it is happening, where it is happening? Are there rotations? 45-degree anti-clockwise, 135-degree clockwise. So the more patterns you have in your mind, the easier it will be to fit those patterns. Even after that, there'll be some questions that are not crackable. Then you take a shot. So out of 25, you have done 20 genuine attempts. I think that's decent enough. Regarding number series, see, you should be good at tables, squares, cubes, and indices, of course, to be decent at number series. And just knowing those things will not be sufficient. Right? For example, a lot of people will know a 343 is a 7 cube, right? But then when I see number 350, can I think about 350 in various angles? Can I think of it as a 7 into 50? Can I think of it as a 7 cube plus 7, right? That is the thought process that you need. Or can I even think of it as a 3 into whatever, sorry, 5 into 7 into something, right? So anything that I have, am I able to think of that number in various angles? That is the important. 68, for example, 4 cube plus 4. Right? You think of any number. So if you're able to do something around it, that will improve your number series solving skills. Correct. But again, if you get stuck on a particular question, not worth it. There'll be some questions. I mean, see, even when people who have prepared extremely well are taking the test, they will come across questions that they're not able to solve, right? So there is no point, I would say, sitting on it for a very, very long time. Okay, what else do we have? Out of 200, how much is 70 percentile? I would suggest that you have a look at one of the videos that I had made, which was how to crack CET. It's there on this particular channel itself. I have given a table in it, which will help you to make an estimate of what score will correspond to what percentile. Okay, so just have a look at that. They will release response sheet this year as per the official channel communication. Thanks a lot, though. I definitely, first of all, haven't seen it, and I strongly believe they'll not do it. But let's see. Be hopeful about it. How conversion varies in terms of difficulty with SimC is than actual one. How to convert marks. Don't even get into it. Why do that unnecessarily, right? See, think of it as that's the final paper. So that's what you've got, whatever it is. A lot of extrapolation exercise is meaningless. And out of context, extrapolation is more meaningless. For example, if I ask you a question now, right, that there is something which is 3, 5, 7, 9, 11. What is the next thing? Your mind tells you that, okay, fine, the number is going to be 13 because we're talking about odd numbers. But then if I say that, okay, this is the amount of or volume of air, let's say, that I'm pumping in a balloon, and the balloon has a capacity of 9 or 11. So after 11, there is nothing. The balloon is going to burst. So the moment I introduce a different context, patterns become also meaningless. So that is why don't extrapolate. It's not going to be a useful exercise. I'm currently scoring a 120, 125, usually get stuck in puzzles. What should I do to get to a 140? Firstly, the moment you realize that it's a puzzle type that you're typically not comfortable with, stay away. For example, 8 people sitting around a table, 4 towards center, 4 away from the center. Maybe not your kind of a thing. If let's say you add blood relations to that, more complexity. So anything that is completely out of the 6 to 7 minute kind of a thing, I'll not get into that. I'll come back to it towards the end. So it's not that you'll not be able to do it. So in fact, the last few years, right, when the paper used to be difficult, that time, even if you had done all the easy ones and left out most of the LR puzzles, you still would have got a 99.9, provided your other areas were in place. And that's the strategy that I used to follow in between, that anything that is too lengthy LR, chuck it. But try to maximize on other areas. What else? In case of jumbled questions, how long should be round 1? How many questions and how much time for round 1? Your round 1 can be anything between 85, 90 minutes or so. Because if you're able to push, I'm assuming somewhere around 110 or 120 easy questions, about 50 moderate, and the remaining difficult. So considering a 120 easy questions, I think around 90 minutes is what your first round is, what you're looking at. But basically your first round ends the moment you reach question number 200 from 1. It may take even more time. How much percentile safe to get JBMS MHRD? I don't remember the exact cutoff, but I think it was around 90 last year to become eligible. And post that, they have the group discussion, interview, and that process, right? So for MSc Finance, I think the cutoff is 97, if I'm not wrong. And for MHRD, I think some 90 or 95, something like that. To be safe, then I would say you'll have to aim for 97. Which will help you to clear both MSc Finance as well as MHRD cutoff. But generally, MHRD would be on the slightly on the lower side. What else? Have we answered all the questions? Okay. Are there GDPA rounds after CET? So for MMS admissions, Kundan, there are no GDPA rounds. So there are 3 main programs. The MMS program, which is the MBA equivalent program. It's a 2-year full-time program where there is no GDPA post CET. Second program is JBMS MSc Finance, 2-year full-time again, but there is GDPI, same for MHRD. Safe score for top 5 colleges from any category. Firstly, category-based cutoffs keep changing a lot. Last year's data is available. So if you go to, I'll just share my screen to show you where to find that information. Because all of that data is publicly available, very easy to access. You just have to go to the CET Cell website, first of all, the current year's website. Once you go there, there is a section called CAP. You click on CAP, go to 2023-24, and then click on MBA MMS. Then you'll be taken to this particular website. And on this website, you will see everything from last year, right? So what was the number of seats in each of the colleges in every category? You will see the cutoff. So cutoff for all India seats, cutoff for the Maharashtra seats for round 1, round 2, and so on. And that will give you the information that you're looking at, right? So everything is here. So let's say, for example, I want to find Jamnalal Bajaj. Last year, cap round 2 is what we are looking at. So I can see there is G open as G SCS, right? So ignore the first G. You can just look at this open. So this is basically the state open seats that are there, right? So I know that the cutoff was 99.89. In terms of rank, that was rank 57. So the entire information that you're looking at is available. I can, for example, look at SimC. So now H stands for home university, O stands for outside home university, and then there are all India seats and so on. So EWS, TFWS, tuition fee waiver scheme, and so on. So everything that you need, category-wise data, if you want to find, you just have to go to CET Cell website, CAP 23-24 MBA MMS, and then this repository opens up. Okay. How to apply for MSc Finance? It's a separate process that happens. We will be communicating that to you once they release it. How to improve BA? Scoring around 15-20, need to score 30 plus. 15-20 definitely means that there is something wrong, right? So either grammar could be an issue, vocab could be an issue, comprehension, speed. So firstly, find out what the issue is and then attack that. So if, let's say, comprehension is the issue, let me do 45 minutes or 1 hour of reading every single day. And there also I'll try and push where I'm able to read more and also comprehend that, because your mind goes like off track when you're reading, right? So that also you'll have to learn. I'm able to solve many of my mock tests in non-test situation, but not in the mock, which means that you should not be taking it in non-mock conditions, right? So you have to solve test within time constraint only. Then only you'll learn how to handle. Sources to study grammar. See, if you studied from the courseware that you have, if you're an IMS student, you have the courseware. Within that, there are grammar topics. So you can learn from that. Otherwise, you can again pick any grammar book available in the market. That should do it. I'll more focus on the kind of mistakes that I'm making and then learn only that. So if, let's say, I make a mistake and that the explanation says subject verb agreement, let me figure out what subject verb agreement is. Or if it says parallelism, let me work on parallelism. If it says misplaced modifier, let me understand what is a misplaced modifier. So that way it's better to learn in the remaining days. Do we have to fill any form apart from CET for JBMS MHRD? Yes. So JBMS MMS will be through CET cap rounds. MHRD and MSc Finance will be separate. That process will be conducted by JBMS. Those two things have not started as of now. I have given till now 5 SimCTs, maximum attempts of 101. What should be the ideal approach for the remaining days? Firstly, your accuracy is a huge problem. 40-50% is like playing with the accuracy, right? It's not anywhere close to what it should be. I will suggest that you can, for example, if I do 100 questions with 50% accuracy, my score will be 50, correct? Now, let's say for a thought experiment, if you mark all 200 questions as C, probabilistically you are at 40. So then technically, even after putting effort, I'm not getting a lot. So my accuracy has to improve. Now, instead of attempting 101 questions, let's say attempt 80 questions with 80% accuracy. My score will be more than what I'm getting right now. So you may have to drop your attempts a little bit, push your accuracy, then increase your attempts. Then do the same thing again. So reduce attempts, push accuracy, score higher, build some confidence, increase attempt accuracy. So that you'll have to keep working on. Is it advisable to do miscellaneous topics like coordinate geometry? Not really. I'll not do it for CET. I've given 6 marks, my score getting reduced from 130 to 48. How did your score go from 130 to 48? Very, very unlikely, first of all. And I don't know, you must have done something terribly wrong to get to a 48. I have 10 SimC as part of AdMat. Which test series shall I buy now? Uh, I don't know, anything. I mean, you can look at Test Funda, for example. So that would be one additional thing that can be looked at. What should be the strategy from now to push from 90, 100 to a 140, 150? So content, accuracy, speed, right? Very, very critical. So if my content is faulty, no matter what I do, my score will not go up. So I have to be absolutely ruthless on that front and say, this question type I have to master. Right? I can't say that I don't know how to do it. So at least for a few areas, I should know everything. So percentages, given any question, I'll be able to solve. Profit loss, given any question, I'll be able to solve. So that kind of confidence you'll have to build. Then accepting that, okay, some question types I'm not good at, let me not spend too much time on it. Right? So categorizing topics as my great topics, my okay topics, my bad topics. Focus on great and okay. And try to get the best out of that. What should be my approach from now if I start for at least 110 mark on the D-Day? Same as what others will also do, right? So it's not going to be very different. Alternate days mock, alternate days solving questions that you're getting wrong, which is, or solving more questions of topics that you're getting wrong. I'm scoring around 120 in SimCT. What is difficulty level of SimCT with actual CT? Mentioned it multiple times in today's session. Actual CET would be generally slightly easier compared to what you see on the SimCT. Generally, but it's very difficult to predict what sort of difficulty will come on the final day. I always walk into a test without any expectations. I was like, whatever happens doesn't matter, right? I mean, you can't predict these things to minute detail, saying the accuracy, the difficulty was so much, it was 5% more than last year. Not really. Okay. All right. I think we have also reached the cutoff time that we had thought of. Of course, there's too much to talk. So I'll suggest a simple thing. If you have any questions, right, that maybe you're looking an answer for, please have a look at the Cracking CET blog. It's crackingcet.com. It's a blog on which I've written a lot of articles on CET, and have a look at that. So that should help you. The second thing that you can do is you can leave a comment on one of those articles and I'll reply to that. The third thing that you can do is on this video, if you leave any comment, I will check it and I'll reply to it. Okay. So those are the ways in which you can get your queries resolved. Thanks, SRRS, for the feedback. Monish has asked how many questions are enough to master a chapter in Quants. Depending on the topic, it could be in the range of 30 to 50 for an easy topic like percentages, to 150 to 100 for geometry on P&C. How to deal with unpredictability? Don't think too much about it. See, all of you are training to become managers, and you will keep hearing a very cliched term called VUCA, right? So unpredictability is going to be there. You cannot do anything about it, but you can be prepared. So you can say, fine, if it is difficult for everyone. If the paper has turned out to be easy, it is easy for everyone. I have to adapt and play accordingly. Right? So don't worry too much about it. Look at it from that angle that, am I doing justice to this particular paper, no matter whether it is easy or difficult? And the same thought process you should have for your SimCETs also. That why am I thinking that this is SimCET? Why am I not thinking that this is the actual CET? Now, how will I perform? Will I be absolutely ruthless or not? Right? I will be. A funny thing that happened when I was a student, and you can imagine the kind of seriousness with which I was taking my test. So what had happened was, when I had gone for my actual CET, it used to be paper pencil test back then, right? And there used to be a seal that is there on the paper. The answer sheet used to be an OMR sheet on which you do color those circles, right? So they had given those booklets, right? The question paper. And there was this guy who was like in the next row. And what he was doing is he was trying to look at the questions by opening the paper. And I was like, I'm so serious about the test. I called the invigilator and I told that this is what the person is doing, right? And you can imagine when I was a student, you're not thinking a lot. You act based on your instincts and everything. But then I was that serious on that day that I could not take that somebody was trying to cheat in that test. I walked out with 195 attempts on that day. And the last 5 questions I could not solve, which was still fine. But I knew that I had given my best on that particular day and I could not have done better. Right. So if you're into that zone where you know that you have done the absolute best that you could have in terms of prep, no matter what happens on the D-Day, you'll be happy with how you have performed. Right. So that's how I look at every single test that I take. Okay. All right. Chalo. Bye, everyone. Wish all of you all the best. I hope things work out for everybody and all of you have some good outcomes over the next few days. We have a session lined up. Shashank is going to be doing another SimCET solving. So hope people will join us for that one. And we'll try and do another AMA maybe towards month end once the dates are announced. Okay. Till then, any questions, feel free to drop a comment and I'll try and reply as soon as possible. Okay. Bye, everyone. Take care.